Well, hello, and welcome back to Read Becca. I should be wrapping up a whole bunch of books that I have already read for you, but I wasn't feeling like doing that today. I was much more feeling like giving you some 5-star predictions. I have been seeing some books in my periphery around the house and had some books on my mind that I think are going to be really fantastic for me, are actually on my shelves, and I want to predict that these books I am going to read and love in the new year, 2025. So all of these are books that I do have on hand and can get to at any moment. And that means they're going to also be prime candidates for my Read What You Own challenge beginning in 2025. So let's dive in. This is a very small list. I think it's very manageable, and it could go really either way. It seems like many of these are predictably promising, but they could really go off the rails if I'm not in the right mood. So let's start with first the one nonfiction book of the list, and that is Marks for Cats by Leclaire Laberge, a radical bestiary. So I've heard no one talk about this. I ordered this because I saw an ad for it on, I think, Goodreads, in fact, which is very unusual. I don't think I've ever done that before. But this is exactly my sort of thing. And this is not too long, but it's a pretty dense, it seems, economic history tying not just Marxism and communism, but general financial systems to cats throughout history. I don't know how that could go, but as I said, I've heard nobody talking about it, and it's a very pretty little book. Like, it's very well delivered. There's pictures throughout. So I don't know how this is going to be, but it seems like exactly my type of book on every front because I'm heavily involved with financial markets and financial systems and economics. I love cats, so this is the intersection of my interests, so very, very much. Next, we have an author. Well, I think basically all of the rest are authors I love. They're authors I've read from and loved before in fiction. So the first is kind of more lit fic, contemporary fiction. This is Miriam Toews' A Complicated Kindness. I definitely want to go on the journey of reading everything Miriam Toews has ever written. She is a Canadian Mennonite author who writes such insightful commentary, very often feminist and about gender depression. Women Talking is probably her most famous and has been adapted to a film, but this is one of her kind of less popular works, certainly. And everything about this synopsis screams generic Miriam Toews synopsis to me. It's basically a young woman who is being put on her path by the Mennonite community and very much controlled by them, though they think they are setting her up for what's right. And that sounds like every Miriam Toews book ever, basically. But it also sounds like it's going to be fantastic and I'm going to love it. Plus there's a chicken on the cover, which is an extra additional bonus point. Yeah, so I think this could be wonderful, but I've heard very little about it from even fans of Miriam Toews, so could go either way. The next is a science fiction author that I love. That is Cory Doctorow, Walk Away. This has been on my shelf since it came out and I have not read it. I even had a second copy because I won it from World Builders. Still didn't read it. I very much need to read this. Cory Doctorow is consistently an author that I love very much. Kind of to the first book, he, I believe, is a Marxist and very frequently incorporates capitalist critiques in his work. So this one, I believe, is a post-scarcity society that involves people just simply walking away to subsist on their own. It's somewhat utopian, I think, and also a thriller, which seems at odds, but I'm very, very intrigued. All of his work is very out of the box from what you expect in terms of science fiction. And I generally love it. I expect this to probably be somewhat near future, as I said, utopian, dystopian mixed. And then we have, I don't know what to expect from this one, and this is Lagoon from Nnedi Okorafor. I really don't know anything about the book itself other than that it's her response to the South African film District 9, which is kind of a science fiction film that was indie but kind of blew up. And I loved that film, but Nnedi, coming from the perspective of understanding and being within that community, she felt that the inclusion of Nigerians specifically was extremely stereotyped and in a way that was pretty prejudiced. For me, as an outsider, I did not pick up on that as much. So I'm really curious to see what she's going to do with this in terms of responding to that previous work and delivering an actual satisfying story here. So I'm a huge fan of Sholto Copley and District 9, and I will be really curious about this one, but I don't even know really what this is about, other than I believe it is a Nigerian first contact story, I think. Then one that is slightly very on the bubble, I will say, just because the timeliness of it. I think I'm gonna love this, but I don't know if it's gonna be the right time for it. And that is Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. I read Kindred this year, and then I bought a whole bunch of her backlist in these lovely 7 Stories Press editions. And this feels like it will absolutely be my catnip, and I'm going to adore it. But at the same time, everything I have heard about this is it's very, very similar to things that are going on in our world right now, specifically in the US. It is very much about a regressive and oppressive political situation. And I don't know how I'm going to be able to necessarily process that. But I also feel like because of that, it might be the right time to read it, even though it's going to be especially emotionally hard. So I think this will be a 5-star, but I also think that emotional and political states may heavily impact that. And finally, one that has appeared on my monthly and yearly TBRs multiple times before, and I've not gotten to, that in fact finishes out a trilogy, and I think I almost certainly will love, is Holy Sister by Mark Lawrence. I really enjoyed the previous 2 books of the series, and even Lawrence is kind of known for not falling to the second book slumped. Specifically, Grey Sister, the second book of this trilogy, is so phenomenal. Really, really incredible. And other trilogies he has that I have not read, equally great reputations for their second books. So going into this one is, I think, slightly shorter than the previous books, but it's such a propulsive and interesting world. We're in kind of a dark but not grimdark world following a magic school that is assassin nuns. It's a really unique setup, great world building. One of the best series for a man writing women, really, and young women. So we have this whole cast of women that are complex, that are friends and enemies and frenemies. They have very complicated relationships in a way that feels very believable. They're fantastic magic systems. It's just a great high fantasy series, generally. Great politics as well, lots of backstabbing. If you like things like Game of Thrones, I would say this has kind of similar beats at a lighter scale than Game of Thrones does. But I put this on my list multiple times, and I kept thinking I was just going to get to this 3rd book. And every time I'm like, I really loved that series so much that I kind of want to go back and read the whole thing. And every time I'm feeling it, I don't have time to go back and read the whole trilogy from the beginning, so I put it off. And so that's where I'm at, is I think this is going to be a 5-star, but I also want to read the trilogy sequentially all together and get that full experience and really sink into it. And I think that could be the best way to deliver the 5-star for this book, but it's going to be a little bit of a time commitment. This is so propulsive and compelling to read that I don't think it's going to be too difficult to slot in. I just really need to make the time for it finally. So that is my 5-star predictions. Let me know. I feel like these are not, other than maybe Holy Sister, these are not super duper popular on BookTube, and I haven't seen a ton of people talking about them. So let me know if you've read these, and yeah, if you absolutely think that I'm gonna hate one of these, tell me please, and I will remove it from the list. I did pick 6 rather than 5, so that maybe I could slot one off and skip it. But overall, I'm very excited about this list. I really want to get to these early into the new year. As I think I said up front, I am planning a Read What You Own challenge, and so these will be kind of top of the pile to get to early on into that challenge, I think. So that is all for me today, I believe, and let me know what you think down below. Thank you so very much for watching.